So we're gonna get started. I want to introduce Gabrielle. She's going to come talk about emerging technology.
Good evening, all. Can you hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Sadiq. I really appreciate it. First and foremost, I would like to thank George Mason University Career Services, GMU Artificial Intelligence Club, ColorStack, GMU, the Society of Women Engineers, GMU, and is it WISIS? WISIS, thank you. I wanted to make sure I got that right. Okay, shout out to you two, and again, Musadik for bringing us all together. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to discuss emerging technologies, the reality and challenges of implementing them, as I represent the business side of the house. So you've got a lot of SMEs here today, and I'm the overarching emerging tech person. Today, I want to discuss how we can effectively develop business cases and use cases, and how we define return on investment. Additionally, engaging with your community is critical to collaborate with other professionals in both industry and government, navigating the ever-evolving technology landscape to take advantage of positive disruptions and leverage innovations. Thank you to all of you, before we get started, for coming out this evening. Really appreciate the time, and hopefully every one of these is impactful to you, all of the speakers, and certainly look forward to networking with you after the event. Emerging technology is cool. It even sounds cool to say it, and it's moving quickly these days, advancing at a rapid pace. This can be challenging for industry to adapt to, even for the commercial sector. The federal government, which is what many of my colleagues here today and I focus on, that can be even more difficult, and most oftentimes that's an understatement. Key items we have to consider in adapting emerging technologies include: what is your business case and your use case? Why should this even be implemented? How much will it cost? Will it save money or time? Is it streamlined for integration? What are the upstream and downstream effects and interdependencies? What about risk? Cybersecurity, which shout out to cybersecurity folks, because that has to be baked into everything we do and not bolted on, and your CISO should be your best friend, just saying. How can we procure this? Is it FedRamped? Don't even get me started there. And how does this tie into executive orders and mandates? What about legislation? And how will we train people to use it if we even get that far? This is not even everything we have to consider. And I'm even talking about a proof of value or proof of concept, certainly not even an enterprise-wide implementation. So all of this so far, sounds negative. So how can this even work? And I will share a real world example that we just recently did that I'm thrilled to share with you all. This is around AI code conversion with ALC and COBOL. Yes, it still exists, and we have a lot of it. We deployed semantic deterministic code transformation to convert ALC and COBOL into Java. For cybersecurity, this was a proof of value, proof of concept in a sandbox environment to keep everything secure, not only while we tested the effectiveness of the solution, but ensured the utmost in security prior to moving into production within the agency environment. For cost considerations, this produces labor savings. ALC and COBOL programmers and developers are not only hard to find these days, they're also incredibly expensive. So if anyone's built a BOE, or maybe you code in ALC and COBOL, try to go find some of those jobs. They pay a lot. We had to address technical ROI. We can analyze source code to identify optimization, security flaws, architecture concerns, and design issues. This identifies not just what the code is, but what the code does, reducing the need for rework and reliance, especially on knowledge transfer from a workforce that has been significantly diminished. We successfully achieved 100% code conversion and are now working towards moving into production, leveraging emerging technology. Also, when looking at emerging technology, we have to define ROI. Examples include time, cost, quality, and reuse. When I was trying to identify emerging technology and how to define it, I actually asked AI how it defines emerging technology. So how do you define yourself? This is what AI told me, is that it shifts from purely financial metrics to a value-based model focusing on long-term strategic positioning, operational efficiency, and learning. Not bad. I like that one. Here's what we most often see in the federal government. They're looking for cost savings, particularly with this administration, is critical. Speed to market, saving time, and doing more with less. Not an easy feat, by the way. A real-world example. We are seeing evolving requirements where speed to market is essential. Quick turn responses and technical challenges. A show me, don't just tell me. This has the need to deliver at extremely large volumes, such as the number of applications, number of databases, petabytes of data, and you have to produce and demonstrate significant cost savings, such as 30% or more in some cases. One of the things that I'm really excited to talk about here when it comes to emerging technology, especially as you right now are in academia, there's such an energy and excitement about sharing your ideas, about collaborating with others. Now more than ever, you building your network currently, and especially as you prepare for graduation and subsequently a career, is so important. I personally, and many members in this room, are part of an organization. I'll just give an example of one, which is the American Council for Technology Industry Advisory Council. Part of the reason, and thank you, Ms. Sadiq, and shout out to many of you who are in ACT, IACT, or in our emerging technology communities of interest. You know, this is great to be able to come speak about because we really bring the best from both industry and government. I would like to say humbly, I have the personal opportunity to collaborate with some of the brightest folks in both industry and government on sometimes a daily and even a weekly basis, sharing our challenges, sharing our outcomes, what's working for you, what's working for us. This really allows us to continue that collaboration. So that same energy that you have in academia, that same sharing from different backgrounds or experiences can continue now and even in your post-career. Getting involved in your community, particularly for students, graduating and your career network is pivotal that you address that now. One of the best things is that you live in an environment where we are very heavy within industry, especially you having the opportunity to not only support the federal government, but sometimes work for the federal government. And you'll hear both of those positions today, and they'll be sharing their same experiences. You being able to connect with these individuals is incredibly beneficial, and I know that we welcome that. And of course, we're more than happy to share that, especially in the networking avenue. The ability to share emerging trends, what others are seeing and what challenges they're experiencing and how they're overcoming them from multiple agencies, multiple commercial backgrounds, and especially within your local communities is pivotal. This allows us to turn even disruption, as we've seen, particularly in the last year, into positive disruption. And that's one of the groups that I belong to within the emerging technology communities of interest, and also other working groups. And they get to collaborate with each other as well. So that cross-collaboration and information sharing is incredibly beneficial. As I close, keep the energy, the out-of-the-box progressive thinking alive and well, and bring that into industry and the federal government. Let us not have process inhibit progress, but let innovation with scale and ROI prevail. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Thank you for everybody within all of the clubs and organizers at George Mason. I would also like to thank our other speakers, Dr. Justin Hubert, Dan Waddell, and Tim Papa. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a wonderful evening.
I am Dr. Justin Newberry. We'll drop the doctor thing now. Just Justin. That's what I tell everybody that I work with. I'm in a few different roles over at Department of Transportation. We're going through what's called a reorganization. So I am moving roles as we speak. I'm going from the CISO of a small agency under DOT. That's the Federal Transit Administration, where we make sure that people move from point A to point B safely. And it's a pretty cool mission. I'm going from that to Director of Cyber Protection, which is the element that has all of DOT's enterprise security architecture, engineering, cyber tooling, AI security, post-quantum cryptography, which Mike Patry is going to talk about next. So I manage all those functions for the Department of Transportation currently as well. So I know we got a lot of new grads in here, some folks who are aspiring, and I'm going to talk a little bit about AI and how that plays into DOT, but I think I also want to talk a little bit about cybersecurity as a field, right? Because I think for new grads, especially, and people that are aspiring, how you get into cyber has always been a big question. And I was lucky. And I don't think much of that luck exists today. So I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. So the first thing though, I'm going to talk about AI. AI. Everybody talking about AI. I love it. I love it so much every day. I am a little tired of it, not gonna lie. But it is a cool thing. There's a lot of good stuff going on with AI. What is AI though? Who all here is in a field with AI in it? Yeah, almost everybody should raise their hands whether you know it or not. It's in your field. But right now, somebody shout out one of the degrees you're in. Electrical. Oh, I like that. All right. Anybody else? Cybersecurity, right? Softball over there. Anybody else? Information technology. Just IT generally? Okay. Yeah. Retail. Art. That might be a bad one to say up here, but art is still there. Like ways you can leverage art. It's hitting all sorts of paradigms. So from a government perspective, we're looking, at least initially, to leverage AI to help us automate functions and speed delivery and effectiveness of our services to the American public. So that's really cool. What does that mean? Well, it means that most of the things I'm trying to help implement AI for involve making people less bored with the work that they have to do day in, day out, and getting them more fun things to do, right? So if there's a bunch of reports, if we can automate that and get it filled out rather intuitively by an AI, and then we get it checked by a human, that reduces their monotonous workload and lets them focus on the hard problems that AI and automation can't solve, the creative stuff. So that's the cool part about what I do. The hard part of what I do for cybersecurity, as far as AI goes, is figure out what everybody's using, because people love their AI. And they also love asking ChatGPT questions they shouldn't ask ChatGPT, like, should we buy this thing that is procurement sensitive, we call it, as in we don't want people to know that we're doing it yet because it kills competition between our vendors. And they put that out there in the wild. Not so great. Or somebody from HR is like, I bet this could speed up my work really fast if I put this Excel document full of social security numbers into this AI. I really hope that you guys don't do that. So it's tough from that perspective. And the thing is that the tools that we have from a maturity perspective, they're out there, but putting them all together, especially in the environments that we built from a legacy perspective over time. So when I say legacy, we're thinking, again, I know some of you cyber, so the old, moat, defensive moat and castle, right, that we talk about in cyber that we're trying to tear down and make it ubiquitous so we secure everything all the time. Those types of architectures are how we built our systems over the last 25, 30, 40 years. And they're really tough to get away from and modernize. So leveraging AI in such environments can oftentimes lead to unintended consequences where it can, an AI agent can access things that we don't necessarily want it to. Or we give too many permissions because if we don't, it breaks, right? You got to have all the permissions to do all the things. But if you don't limit the permissions, then it can't do the thing. So it's a weird paradigm that we find ourselves in. So how do we solve this? A lot of it has to do with modernizing our systems. Honestly, I think that the biggest thing I do in cybersecurity is show business value by modernizing our systems. I push that forward because if we can modernize our systems and modernize how we leverage data, we can more effectively use AI in a secure manner that benefits everybody. And that's a really boring way of saying I secure things by making them work better. But it's a great story for the people that sign my paycheck. So it's a good way to talk about it. It's a good way to think about it because security in the end is always about adding back value to the business, reducing risk, right? And making risk manageable so the business can operate in the context that it is, right? So that's how we kind of leverage AI. That's kind of what we use it for, but it's been around for a long time. And when I say AI, what does everybody think about? I say AI. What do you think? What kind of AI?
Gen AI.
Gen AI, right? Like ChatGPT, right? Would you be surprised if there's more AI out there? Vision models. I know some of you know this. Vision models and machine learning algorithms that have been powering things, expert systems that have been around for many, many years. There's a lot of things out there that aren't just Gen AI. Gen AI is cool, but you have to remember that it's also inherently limited because it's at least the current ones that we're looking at and we think about are based on natural language processing, which means that they have a tough time doing anything that's not language based. They also are eminently hackable by social engineers. I know this because that was one of my roles too, and I love breaking the guardrails on LLMs. So you can utilize the programming and the training of these Gen AI tools against them because they're inherently trained to be responsive and positive. They want to help you. And they use natural language processing so that language can be turned against them to get you to do, for you to get them to do what you want. So I have to guard against all of that as we're rolling out AI at a speed in which I think very few technologies have rolled out. It's tough, and it's why we need you, right? You come in with fresh new ideas. You have a new way of thinking about things. You bring a diversity of experience from all sorts of different, classes and life experiences. So we need that right now. We need flexibility of thought. We need different approaches. And so that's why you guys are so needed. Right? So believe it or not, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing some of you around and getting in the field here, whether it's cybersecurity or if it's adjacent to that in some way. But we need you. So just take that message from here. Keep it during your networking is we need you. So let's find a way to get you in. All right. So I will shift from that to cybersecurity and how to get in it. So cyber is a tough field because I think for a long time, there's been a lot of marketing that says, if you go do a cyber thing, you're guaranteed a job. The problem is that I see, and this is now, I want you guys to understand a couple things about me. I work for the government, but I'm also an adjunct professor. I teach cybersecurity. I teach at the doctoral level, the undergrad level. So I teach this. And the one thing I will tell you is that cyber is not an entry-level job in that walking out the door, it's really tough to get a new job in cyber as somebody who's not had any experience. Entry level in cyber typically is 2 to 3 years of experience in IT or an IT related field, typically, so that you have some grounding about the problems we're trying to solve with security. Now, I'm not telling you that cyber is a dead end and you can't get in cyber as a new person. I'm just telling you, I'm setting the ground, like the level of expectation, so that you can understand that it's okay if you go and work in the data field for a little bit. In fact, I encourage it to broaden that diversity of experiences. To work in IT help desk, as crappy as that sounds, it's going to teach you a lot about the soft skills of working with people, because people sometimes suck. It is what it is. So even if you're doing something in retail and then doing projects on the side, whatever it is, get your hands dirty, show some experience, show some passion, push it forward, and don't be afraid to take on jobs that aren't exactly in the path you want to be, knowing that you can always just keep edging towards that path. And that's what I did. I said at the beginning, I was like, I kind of lucked out. I did. I got in the cybersecurity field right as President Obama declared cyber a domain of warfare. A bunch of degrees were spun up. And I went to one of the first ones at University of Maryland Global Campus a long time ago. And then I was able to go into the government as a new cyber grad. But I didn't do pure cyber. The first thing I did was systems administration. I went in and I helped support statistical analytical software, if anybody knows what SAS is, and I helped a lot of masters in public health track diseases across the United States for HHS. That's mostly what I did. And then I dabbled in the side and helped the senior cybersecurity guy do that job. So I'm just here to tell you, like, cybersecurity is a fantastic field. It's tough to break into. It's not impossible, but it's tough. It's okay to go into something that's adjacent to it and then keep working towards it, because the other secret nobody tells you is that all these fields in IT are cyber. They are. You're going to work with security. You're going to implement security. It's part of your job if you're working in IT whatsoever. So you're already in cyber if you take one of these jobs. Then you have the decision of whether you want to be pure cyber. So that's what I'd leave you with. And I'm going to stick around for a little bit to talk to you guys about those experiences if you want after this. But I just want to kind of throw it out there, right? I just wanted you guys to understand how to approach it, and don't be afraid to work on the side and leverage your experiences to get in that way. All right. Well, I'm going to stop there. I really appreciate the time, and we'll bring it on to the next guest.
All right, so our next speaker is Dan Waddell. He's a federal partner at IBM. His talk will be about post-quantum cryptography. Please give him a big round of applause.
Thanks, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good, good? Hey, you know, it's been a long time since I've been here. I actually was here for my undergrad a long, long time ago. You can probably tell by the gray hair. It was decades ago. Almost got lost. Love to follow the little robots, taking the pizzas to the dorms and all that. Actually, I think the last time I was here, they scheduled my dorm for demolition. That should give you some idea on how long it's been since I've been here. But want to thank Musaddiq, Arush, the entire team for setting up this event and inviting me. It's an absolute honor. As you said, I work for IBM. I've been in the federal government contracting space for probably about 30 years now. I started in IT, moved into cybersecurity. At the time, it was called information assurance, probably around 9/11. And so really probably for the past 15 years or so, I've been more focused on cyber operations and cyber defense. And that's where this topic of post-quantum cryptography really has come about over the past year or so. It's funny, I've seen two what we call transformational shifts in federal government IT over the past 20 or so years. The first one was embracing cloud technologies. This was probably around 2010. I know some of my friends here experienced that. And then probably 5 or 6 years ago with ChatGPT, it was artificial intelligence and Gen AI, and we've seen that really take off and really help transform how the government does business. And now, really in the past year, we here at IBM have seen post-quantum cryptography really take off. So I'm just a quick show of hands. This will kind of help base some of my talk here. Just raise your hand. How many of you have heard the term post-quantum cryptography, PQC, prior to this evening? Okay, a few, but certainly the minority. Okay, what about just quantum computing in general? Okay, a little bit more hands, perfect. So I like to kind of introduce this concept with this two-sided coin concept of quantum compute versus what we call in IBM quantum safe when we talk about post-quantum cryptography. So from a quantum computing perspective, obviously IBM has been building quantum computers for many years. A lot of people that come up to me, they say, is this a real thing or is this something I see in the movies? No, it isn't actually a real thing. We actually lease quantum compute time in the cloud to several of our clients today. BMW is a client, HSBC, which is a large global bank, is a client. We're actually working with them on how to time and predict bond trading on the bond market. So think of some use cases there. We work with a lot of hospitals and healthcare to model how prescriptions can be more effective and really heal patients much faster. So there's some really strong use cases from a quantum computing perspective that do good for society, right? And obviously we're a big part of that here at IBM. Now, my role in post-quantum cryptography is more on the defense side. So think of the nefarious ways maybe a nation-state threat actor could get a quantum computer and use it to attack and break into some of our vulnerable crypto. So when I talk about vulnerable cryptographic algorithms, think of anything on the elliptical side, ECC, RSA. I know I'm throwing a lot of terms out there, but basically there are antiquated algorithms that protect a lot of our data. And the way I like to kind of introduce this concept to somebody who's never heard of it is think of a lock. And think of a lock that we put on our house, an old lock with a key that, if you know how to do it, you could probably pick it. If anybody's been to a lockpick village and learned how to pick locks, it's a relatively easy skill to learn if the lock was built many, many years ago. But as we probably know, there are locks today that are digital, that you can encrypt and actually use things like fingerprints and key codes. This data is encrypted with algorithms that make it a lot harder, right? So from a post-quantum cryptography perspective, what IBM is really focused on is helping to protect our systems now that may be using those really old locks. So if I'm a citizen of the United States of America, I know there's some really super sensitive material. Department of Transportation, obviously one. We've got some folks up at the Pentagon. We've got some folks up at Fort Meade. Pick a federal agency. All of them have some level of super secret data that they do not want our nation state threat actors. Think of a foreign country that wants to do bad things to us. They don't want them to break in, right? So IBM is now, yes, we are developing quantum computers, but we're also helping federal government agencies protect and upgrade their systems so that when, not if, a nation state actor gets a quantum computer ready to break into those old locks, we will be ready. Now, a question I get from everybody is, Dan, when? When is somebody going to have a cryptographically relevant quantum computer that can break into these systems that the classic computers that we use today just can't do it? Like when we developed these old locks, these old algorithms decades ago, we really didn't think that the quantum computers were going to be ready. But guess what? A lot of roadmaps, including IBM's own roadmap, says 2029 is the year when we will have a relevant fault-tolerant quantum computer that can break into those classical algorithms. So what does that mean for all of you? We need your help. We need your help at IBM, at every other company, all the other federal government agencies that need to start this journey now. Because, Justin, I'm going to pick on you because you said PQC. DOT not only has the Federal Aviation Administration, but they have several other smaller agencies that need to protect rail, road, every mode of transport. You can imagine how many systems need to be upgraded, not just within FAA, but within DOT in general. Some of the transformational roadmaps from a project perspective, they're saying it's going to last until 2035. Well, you guys are smart enough to do the math, right? If there's a quantum computer that's going to be ready in 2029, 2035 is too late. So how can we help? Knowing that we need to get started now, a lot of the work that IBM is doing is working with these federal agencies to start building that roadmap and start to prioritize, really having conversations about what type of data you need to protect, where are your crown jewels, and let's upgrade those first in phases. Get those protected so that when another nation can use a quantum computer to attack us, we'll at least have those crown jewels protected, and then we can work on the rest of them. Maybe they're not so important. Maybe it's just a system that holds a website or runs email that can be backed up. But those are super easy to recover. Again, having those classification systems from a high, moderate, or low, we really want to focus on those high value systems first, right? So a lot of students in here, how can you help? Hopefully by now you're taking some classes in mathematics, in computer science, in cybersecurity, in information technology, and just also a general consulting approach where you're not only attacking this problem with technology, you're helping to solve it through a human-to-human interaction. Because as we all know, projects are not just solved with technology. They are solved with people. And people plus technology make it such a powerful solution, right? So a lot of times when folks are asking IBM for advice, the first question I ask them is not what tool are you running? What's your tech stack like? How are you going to install this patch to make this work, right? I'm saying, who owns this within your organization? Who's going to be the point person that runs this as a project? And then from there, we talk about governance. How are we going to manage this project? It's working with all the various stakeholders, all your subcontractors, all of the suppliers, all of your vendors, because certainly within the federal government, it takes a village to build a system. It's not just one piece of technology. So hopefully I've convinced some of you to really get interested in post-quantum cryptography. I think this is a threat that we all need to take seriously, but we can all solve it if we work together. So I'll be hanging around here, happy to answer any questions that you all have. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tim Papa. He is a deception professional at Walmart Global Tech, and his topic is going to be about cyber deception. Please, I'm here to give them a round of applause. I'm very excited.
Sitting back there thinking like, what is it that you might want to hear that would like resonate? And the question I had is, as a student, what is it that sets you apart from anybody else? And that's a hard question. I thought if I share a little bit about my background, which is not traditional, that could be encouraging, that could be annoying too, right? Because I don't come from a cybersecurity background, but I'm deeply in it. And I think there's a lot of things you can take away from this. So I was thinking about this last night, like what's been consistent. It's been following my passions. And I know that sounds cliche, but hear me out because I've tried to build upon everything I've done to bring something fresh to the cyber scene. I used to be in journalism in college. I thought that's what I was going to do. And I ended up getting into studying Southeast Asia. And I ended up interning at the CIA. And that was unexpected. I spent time in Indonesia for about a year living in Islamic boarding schools. And my whole purpose there was I was interested in communication. That was back in 2005. I was big into journalism. I was not happy with the way the media were portraying Muslims in the US after 9/11. So I thought, who else is going to go live in these boarding schools than me? I know these old white guys writing about Islam are not going to go do it, but I'm going to do it. But I also knew that was a marketing strategy, right? If I do that, I'm going to start to become untouchable. I'm going to be unique. People are going to be interested in my expertise. So I went and did that. And it was transformative, of course. But one thing that was a big takeaway for me there was trying to, in an immersed setting, how was it that this community that was so conservative, on paper they would disagree with these proselytizers so much. I would shadow and live with these proselytizers who were very progressive minded, and by progressive I mean they tried to push concepts like pluralism and tolerance and things like that. Why did they like them so much? And that's where I started to see what was about their credibility, their artifacts of credibility. They had been on Hajj, their title within the community, the way they spoke. Of course, they could speak and read Arabic, even though they were Indonesian. They would make those connections there, but then they would be funny, they were good looking, they were vulnerable. They would tell vulnerable stories, they'd bring emotion into it. I'm like, that's how they're connecting with them. If you fast forward, I use that in how I design sock puppets online. What is it that makes people authentic online? What is it that makes you think they're authentic? When I create content that appears emotional and vulnerable. They're fake people, but you don't necessarily know that. Because I know in the research it says this is how people make evaluations, but I experienced it firsthand. That's how I took that, experienced it, and turned it into something that I could use in cybersecurity. So I was at CIA, then I was at DIA, then I was at the FBI. And also I never expected to go to these places. I thought the FBI would be like bank robberies, which I didn't want to do. I didn't care about that, but I just kind of went with it. And because I spoke Indonesian well enough to score well enough at the time, I got in. It was a critical language at the time. You needed 3 years work experience. I had none because I just had internships, but I got in. Of course, I never used it once in 16 years in the FBI, but it got me in the door. And more importantly, I think it was the experience of going somewhere out of my comfort zone to just be in it and grow. That's what made a difference. I think other speakers have made that point about like trying different things to grow yourself. I completely agree. I know that doesn't feel good when you're like, I gotta look for a job and things like that. But I think it's really important. This is gonna come up again and again in terms of like, what are the qualities where people seem to really thrive in these environments? Now I'll get to BAU in a second in terms of how we look for profilers that we thought are really gonna do well. But a great example, Adam Deary, he's on our team at Walmart. And Adam doesn't have a background in deception, but he thrives on our team because of the energy he brings to ideas. He's relentless with his ideas. Sometimes it's too much for me. You know, it's too much for me. But he brings a background as a developer that on paper, no one would think cyber deception practitioner. But he is key on the team because of his energy and his personality and things he's learned elsewhere, right? So at the FBI, I did a lot of things in counterintelligence, but it wasn't until I had a mentor who said, you need to diversify a little bit. Why don't you go do something in cyber? So that was completely new to me. So I'm one of those people, right? Who's like, yeah, I'm new to it. I'm going to act like I know what I'm talking about. And I went to cyber division headquarters, and I did have to learn to like talk the talk a little bit. But that was a good experience because you had all these executives there who've continued on to be executives in other cybersecurity companies getting briefings, and they didn't necessarily always understand the technical aspect of it. So I had to learn, how do I communicate this function or this attack to them so it makes sense? And obviously, that's a pretty important skill. But at that halfway point in my career, as I started getting into cyber terrorism and cyber investigations, the last 6 years of my time in the FBI is when I went to BAU to become a profiler on a unit that specialized in cyber offenders. Again, not something I looked for. There'd be people all the time that would be like, I always wanted to be a profiler. I watched Criminal Minds, and I was annoying again because it's like, I've never seen Criminal Minds. I didn't dream about it. I didn't plan for it, but I was following my passions. When I first met other profilers that were working on cases and I saw what they could do, I was like, I got to use this in all my cases. So I did, and that's how I started to get to know people. So networking has been a huge key in every part of my career, right? In terms of mentors and people having ideas and people encouraging me, and like, you should go look into this kind of thing. Every single time it's been that. I didn't necessarily have the idea, like I should go in this direction. I didn't think I'm gonna go live in Islamic boarding schools one day. That's crazy. I never thought of that, but people are like, you should do this. This is important. Those people are really important. But at BAU, the whole thing was, you weren't looking at investigations, you were looking at behaviors. That's what they tell you on day one, right? Like, forget the cases you were running before, you're gonna focus on behaviors. And what's interesting about that experience is we started to get into deception. And this is when BAU started to create a small shop that focused on deception and influence. And the whole format of being a profiler is that you have investigative experience, but in every situation, you're gonna look at it through a lens of behavior, and you're gonna look at whatever data you can see. Only activity you can see. You're not trying to presume anything, but only activity that you have on that person or that group. And then you bring in these other frameworks, these academic frameworks, these theoretical frameworks to fill in those gaps. And that's the thing. A lot of people think profilers from these shows have like magic they can do. I can do magic, but that is because of the rigor of how I do my approach and my analysis. That's why it's different, because it's intensive. I don't say this as a boast, but there was a lot of PhDs we come across all the time who figured we were PhDs, like we're not, but we're just intensive in that space. Because again, you're in a setting where you may not have a lot of time, but you've got to understand as much as you can about this individual. Maybe you only have 15 minutes to look at their X account. And now you're also trying to look at research literature as quickly as you can and make that digestible for operators or other agents of like, so they can use it in a practical way. Those are skills I kept building upon to get me to Walmart today. And it was fortuitous that Walmart, around about 3 or so years ago, was starting to go in a different direction with deception. They had a deception team, but it was really just two guys on their, almost like on their free time, keeping tabs on this software. That's all it really was. It wasn't really a deception program. And they're like, this doesn't work for us at all. It's not effective. And you'll hear that from a lot of people who look at deception tech and that software. You'll hear this a lot. Obviously, I've spoken and shared that sentiment in rooms where people from deception tech companies have been, which is always a little awkward afterwards, but we've never had a bad conversation. But we just don't accept it. It doesn't work for us. And it's been this whole approach of, we're going to do it our own way. Around the time I came across Walmart was when they decided that and said, we need to make this data-driven. We need to make it behaviorally based. And we got to customize our own thing. So we found each other at the right time, right? So when I came to that team, that's when we started to try and figure out, how can we build something new here in terms of like how we approach using cyber deception? If you don't know what cyber deception is, probably now's a good time to tell you what it is. Because a lot of you have heard this term before, right? We like to talk about deception and influence. Deception at its core is just, if you're my target, I'm just trying to distort how you make decisions for my own benefit. That's deception. It's by design. I want to exploit you behaviorally and cognitively and technically by design. And then I want to gain compliance in some way. I want you to do what I want you to do. It's influence. That's cyber deception. right? It's not just trying to annoy people. It's not just trying to put tripwires and decoys. Yeah, maybe that's under the umbrella, but that's not effective deception. That's the old way. If you think I could just litter things around the network and it'll like catch people, it doesn't work. You've got to have a design strategy. Now, this is where it comes together with BAU, right? Like, because the whole premise of something like BAU is detectives and agents are coming to you because they're having trouble with their cases. They can't figure out a way to get to some objective. So we try to come up with something fresh for them. And typically it's because they've learned a certain way to do things. They trust their gut, they have talent. That might be okay. But what if you add some rigor to it? Why don't you try this interviewing technique and it's based on this behavior? Don't do something if you don't have behavior to point to. It's not going to be effective. You're going to be lucky, right? And that's how we approach it from Walmart, which is a massive enterprise around the world. We have 7 people on our team. How do we make that scalable? We will only respond to things where we actually see behavior. Because you got to remember, there's a whole network enterprise. Even if you're a small organization, there are people who have responsibilities to do network defense. Let them do it. Academics get this wrong a lot. They think deception's got to be everything, but it doesn't. We're like a boutique design shop. We augment what you do. We try to enhance what you do. Something that's definitely been a struggle for a lot of organizations, definitely the government, but also industry, is like, what is cyber deception going to look like in the future? And this is a struggle for me now at Walmart too. How do you get an organization to understand how you can use influence that's really low cost to get what you want? And I'm not talking about just one attacker on the network. I'm talking about the things that you communicate, the things that you message out there and how it impacts people. A lot of this comes back to my time at BAU where I would focus a lot on messaging, right? It was all about like, if we want to reach Russian communities of hacktivists and other people on that spectrum, how do we do that? We got to look at where things aren't really working well, right? If I'm doing a press conference for DOJ and I just get up here and say, you're all bad and we're going to find you and watch your back, you're next. And here's the example, we'll get you like we got them. That doesn't work at all. That's not persuasive communications. And they still do it to this day. I've studied this stuff of like, what's their content, their communications? It's not effective at all. They don't actually have a strategy. Talk to them about it. I've experienced it. So how do you reach them? Well, you need messengers. You need messengers that they think are authentic. You need vulnerable, emotional messengers, right? So you go back to what I experienced in Indonesia. That works. People expect that. They connect with it. That's when I started talking to a lot of felons, cybercrime felons from Russia, Ukraine, the US, who've gotten out of jail, who are trying to rebuild their lives. And this comes back to, these are the messengers we need to reach those communities, right? Because if the government's not doing it very well, they are telling friends and family what their experiences have been like. I'm not going to go into that whole topic, but my point is, that's a little crazy. It's also crazy that Walmart lets me do that stuff in terms of they're like, I don't know if they're like looking closely at what I'm researching, but my point is, again, like, how does that change the perspective on a company if you do this? In June, Walmart's gonna have an event called Hacking Herndon, and one of our keynote speakers is gonna be a Russian cyber criminal felon. That's a big deal. But to me, that's a big deal for that guy because maybe he gets to experience a little bit of trust from people. And I know it's hard for a corporation to measure it, but you know that's a big deal too for people watching. Walmart's okay with that? Who else is Walmart hiring? What else are they doing there? All this stuff can factor into deception and influence. I could talk endlessly about all the other technical components of it, but a lot of this still comes down to real and imagined perceptions. I've used that phrase a lot in a paper once, and someone's like, why are you using that phrase so many times? It's because I like it, okay? I like it. I think it makes sense when you talk about organizational perception management. It's not only what the people in an organization think about your organization, but the people out of it. You got to consider that with attackers. Attackers who are like, I want to get Walmart. I want to make them pay. You know, this guy is going to speak at Hacking Herndon. He came to speak at Herndon recently too with a small group. He's like, Walmart used to be on my target list. I'm like, it's good. But we want to understand that. Why? What were you looking for? What were the vulnerabilities? This has been our approach to deception. We want to do things that are different, that are disruptive, that shock people, that surprise them. because maybe we're kind of privileged at Walmart where it's like we've got some strong defense. They're gonna catch people and just kick them out. Okay, that's fine, that's true. But deception can be effective anywhere. I would guarantee it. I think it comes down to how you approach it. The more and more companies that I talk to who are just starting programs, if they're interested in starting programs, they're smaller, but they're like, well, how do I do it? And we're already starting to see impact from this. The final point I'll make, if this is new to you, the encouraging thing is it's kind of a wide open space. Nobody's really writing about it. They really aren't. If I see someone write about something with deception, I'm like, because it's so unusual. If you go back like a year or so, we had 2 openings on our team, and there were 300 people that applied, and only 2 people out of those 300 had the deception background, and they didn't get hired either. I don't know who they were, but my point is that doesn't really matter that much. More and more people are talking about it. If you want to suddenly emerge in this space, it doesn't take a whole lot to start doing what you're doing already. I'm no expert on LLM agents and other aspects of AI, but I'm stepping into that space and just be like, I'm gonna do it. I better know what I'm talking about. We just wrote a paper recently that was all about LLM swarms, right? And the whole idea is like everyone's saying, this is difficult, the computing, it's too expensive, there's not enough resources for it. They're not acting like a lot of like swarm animal behaviors in terms of being instinctual. I'm seeing all of that out there. And there's all these people who are like, I know about LLM agents, or I don't know anything about LLM agents. To me, I'm like, great, I love this space for deception. Because if you're an attacker and you want to come into our network, you're worried about human defenders, and maybe now you're worried about LLM agents. Do we have them? How do you know? You don't know, do you? But if I start writing about it and we start talking about it, maybe we do. That's going to slow you down. That's going to confuse you. Well, this paper is just about, what if we just created a fictional idea of a swarm of LLM defenders? Could that be more effective than spending all this time trying to actually develop a swarm of LLM agents? Yeah, maybe. But again, I think all of you can actually emerge in that space. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I'm always willing to talk. I'm always interested in people who are interested in deception and influence. It's a very open space. It hasn't really been defined. And my own opinion, final thing I'll say, my own opinion is that it wouldn't be fair for me to say, because I have a job right now, to be like, well, it's tough out there with cybersecurity. I don't know how tough it is for you, but I will say anything you can do to set you apart, that's a good thing. And deception actually gives you an opportunity to do that. So yeah, thank you for your time, everybody.
All right. All right, so give a big round of applause to our amazing speakers. They did an incredible job. So as Vice President of AI Club, I have to thank the people that have coordinated with us, worked with us, such as Color Stack, Society of Women Engineers, like the food, and the Women in Cybersecurity for your guys' support, and of course, Philip from Career Services. So I want to give a big round of applause to those amazing organizations. So now I'll present Musa to the stage to share some of his words.
I'm gonna keep this short so you guys can get to the networking portion. I just want to thank the main organizers. Without them, this would not be happening. Samir, he did all the marketing material. Arush, she spearheaded the whole thing. She took over, and then it just came together. Ungud, he led the whole thing in the background too. And then from Society of Women Engineers, she organized the food for us. So thank you guys. Without you guys, it would not be possible. And then I want to just mention there's an AI day coming up. You guys can ask more questions to Ungud. He will answer any questions you guys have. It's You don't need any background in AI. You just show up, present projects. So talk to Ungit. He will give you more details. And then I just want to say, can the industry leaders just raise their hands so people know who to talk to? So just look around. Raise your hand. There you go. These guys right here too, they're not raising their hands. And then there's some in the back, so, corner them, ask them questions, it's open floor from here. Good luck.